Hi, welcome. I'm Nathen Erznoznik, and I'm excited to be with you to share a little bit about our Quilter's Creative Touch beginnings. Look for a few other videos that we also have regarding the QCT Pro. We're also going to talk about some amazing gold cards a little bit later on in some other videos, and also some cool hints and tips. Right now, you might be thinking, should I listen? Do I need to hear part of what automation is? I've thought about it, maybe you haven't. One of the things I'm really excited to do is show you actually how easy it is to use and some of the key things that really allow quilting to be done regardless of how much skill or how comfortable you even are with computers and different types of technology. Right now, I'm going to show you a couple things to take a look at. You do have a machine, and let me maybe start by talking about the compatibility briefly. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but if you think, hey, I already have a mid-arm or a long-arm machine, if it's a Grace Company machine, the Quilter's Creative Touch is compatible with all of our machines that we manufactured. If you have a domestic machine, there are many brands and many different models that you can also add computer automation to. One of the great things about computer automation is that it actually grow with you as your skill sets improve and as you might move from a certain machine to even a larger machine. That's one of the amazing things we have here at Grace Company, is trying to keep things simple, letting you start where you're most comfortable, building your skills, and then letting that continue to build and move with you as you continue to learn more. We're going to take a quick look at the screen. I'm going to show you a couple things. I'm going to show you right off the bat how easy it is to take a pattern, place a pattern, and sew a pattern. So on the screen, if we look, there's a couple icons that we have on the beginning software, and we can tell it's beginnings because it states Quilter's Creative Touch 5 beginnings. One of the great things is there are a lot of manuals and other information, but really quick, if we look at this, select and sew and pantographs. Right now, I'm going to show you how easy by simply selecting the select and sew. I can choose any pattern that we want to quilt. Let's go ahead and choose this fun pattern. It opens it up. And now what I would like to look at is we kind of move over here on the quilt. We'll be able to see I have a pretend square here on the quilt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one of our most simple methods, which is just our block. And it's really easy. Our screen will show us that in order to sew this pattern, it's looking for the top left corner and the bottom right corner of the block. I'm going to move the machine over, and I have this block that I've drawn out here on the quilt. And I'll go up to that top left edge. I'm going to simply touch and tell it that my machine is there. I'll now move the machine down and across the square down to the bottom right side. We're now going to tell it it will automatically size the pattern. It has positioned the pattern, and the pattern is now ready to sew. It's literally that easy. We selected a pattern, we told it where we want that pattern to go, and I am going to hit quilt. With quilting, the machine automatically knows where it's at. It will know how much stitches, and we can set those types of things. But I'm simply going to hit the button sew so that we can see how easy it is to actually place a pattern and sew it out. So here we go. Machine's going to move to its start point. Might ask us a couple quick questions to make sure that our thread's where it needs to be. It automatically knows where the center is, and there we go. It's moved to the center. Here it goes. It's sewing and tying off, and I'll simply hold this thread for a minute as it begins, and away we go. As this sews, one of the things I love to talk about is really how the machine does it all for you. What we did is we went and found the block and the space we wanted to put it into. We simply told it where that area was. It automatically sized it. One of the great things is you can choose, do you want a little extra room? What kind of margin do you want? It sews it all out, and now as we're finishing, it's actually doing its own tie-offs. Those are all an availability for you to set. How many tie-offs do you want? How many stitches do you want in an inch? The great thing about a lot of these machines is that the system can stitch regulate them if they're not, but the Grace machines are fully stitch regulated, so it does take advantage of the built-in stitch regulation. I'm going to kind of just take us back down here to the bottom. I'm just going to trim this thread. Some of you might ask and say, hey, should we trim that beforehand? Sure, you can pause the machine to trim it. Right now, I like to kind of do that at the end. I'm kind of a quick goer. Let's get this sewing. Let's get it done. And right now, you can tell that the quilting has been done. It's been perfectly positioned, perfectly sized, ready to go. And if we're ready, we simply can now move to the next block, place it, and quilt it. So I wanted you to quickly see how easy it was to actually select a pattern and quilt a pattern. Now let's go back to the main screen here briefly, and I'm going to talk about a couple things. A lot of people will ask at this point, they're going to want to know, how many patterns does it come with? Well, let me just talk briefly about the beginning software. So let's go back to our home screen here so that we can kind of see. In the beginning software, we have two major functions. We'll briefly get back into how to do the pantograph. But what we did do, we just did the select and sew. So I'm going to go back in here. You can see, and I love talking about this, that there are different categories for different functions of what can be sewn. Let me go into continuous line. This is what we would refer to as more of an edge-to-edge pattern, where the pattern starts on the left. Let's go ahead and choose one of these so it's easier to see on the screen. Let me zoom in just a little bit for you guys. Here we go. So we can see that there's actually a start on the left. The pattern will go through and it finishes on the right. So that's always fun to see. Again, that was one of our continuous line. We also have another fun aspect called the triangle, and I'm going to show you a fun trick a little bit later on in the video on how to take a pattern like this and actually create different patterns. The system as a whole does come with over 230, and again, on the beginning, the great thing about it is you can go and add any other pattern that you want to find out there from other pattern manufacturers and simply bring them in by opening it, and you can then directly quilt those out onto the quilt. So again, the system does come with a little over 230 different patterns. You can go and you can select different ones that you do buy. People will ask, well, can you design or can you modify them? Again, come back or look at our other video talking about the Quilters Creative Design Pro. The Pro system does give you an ability to digitize and make your own pattern or edit existing patterns. The beginning software that we're looking at right now does come with the Select and Sew feature for accuracy and placement. Again, taking a quick look down here at our fabric, you can see how precise that was placed inside of this block area. And it also gives us the ability to do edge to edge, which is what I would love to show you next. We're going to simply move over, and I have a little bit of a modification. I have a small so-called border, or you might even use this for sashing on a quilt. And when we're done, we'll talk about the process that's used to quilt down an entire quilt. So again, one of the things I'm going to do is we're going to move into our next function here called the pantograph screen. Here it opens that and it puts us into this, and I'm going to show you a quick little trick. We can actually go measure the actual quilt itself, and so I'm going to move now to that top left corner, and we're simply going to tell it that that's where we're at. We're going to come across over here to our right bottom size, and the fun thing about this is that it automatically can take and apply that exact dimension. So again, if we were to kind of go back to the quilt, you're going to notice that there is the line that we were using for the area. I simply moved from the upper left corner. I then moved the machine down to the right, and I was able to capture that size. So maybe if we can take a look at the screen here, we have this blank canvas, but that canvas or this area is the exact size of that little area in the below. I'm going to go just choose a pattern to show you how easy this is. Let's choose this awesome, beautiful heart. And one of the fun things we can do is just simply add the patterns we want. We're literally now ready to sew this in one go down onto or into this border or into this sashing. So we're going to sew this as a single pattern. It opens it up for placement. We can use the 2-point placement that we did last time. I love the fact that you can be as accurate as you want to be. I love using this next one. Let me zoom in just a little bit again so that everybody can kind of see this. This is using all 4 corners of that particular block area or the sashing or your border so that this pattern will perfectly fit inside. Now, stay with me here for just a minute, because one of the things I love to do is when I'm quilting something across an area, the wider that area is, then I want to make sure I have a little bit more room on the top and the bottom. And what I can do is I can come in here and simply decrease that top and the bottom and add. I've just added an 1/8 inch to the top and the bottom, so it's now automatic. Again, coming back to it, if we go down to the fabric, I will now go to each corner. So I'm at the bottom left corner, the top left corner. I'm going to use and find the top left part of my pattern. I'm going to touch it. It will position that, and let's go out here so we can see this. Let me come down to that bottom left corner, and we're going to now place that one. We'll now go across the area that I'm going to be putting this pattern into, and I'm going to do the bottom right, People also want to know, is there specific direction? Do we need to go to the top right or the bottom first? No. One of the amazing things with this software is that it's smart enough that it actually does a lot of the thinking for you. So we can simply move that around to position it for accuracy. And so that's a great thing to be able to know. We don't have to be accurate because the system is accurate. And so the system can do all of this work for us. Again, remember, I went in, was able to quickly take a snapshot of how big this area is, chose the pattern I want. It built that pattern into this area. I'm now ready to quilt. I'm going to add one step to this before we go into quilting. Last time I just kind of was quilting this out. One of the things that's a known practice on this process is to do what we call pulling up the bobbin. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to first take the bobbin from underneath the fabric. And what this will allow us to do is to bring that bobbin from underneath and bring that to the top surface so that we can do all of our trimming and manage this thread on top of the surface. Again, the machine's smart enough, it knows where it's going to begin. It moves over to wherever it's going to start. And if we can take a quick glimpse at the screen, I'm going to walk through. It actually can walk us through step by step what to do. It tells me first to grab this, and it's telling me to hit single stitch. It then's going to let that machine move out of the way and then come back and automatically start. So I'm going to hit single stitch. The machine will do that stitch. I'm then going to move it away. It will then automatically move the system out of the way. And again, I'm going to be holding this thread. If we can take a close-up look at that, you'll see that thread popped right up out of the bottom. So now I'm going to hold those two in my hand, and we're really, at this point, ready to quilt. Some people want to know, well, do we have to move it back? Remember, at this point, the machine has complete control over the surface and over the quilting area, and it also knows what pattern it's going to do. So I do not need to move this around at all. It actually is locked in place because it has control over this. Simply, I can take one action. If we look at the screen again, there's an option that says sew. So I simply can hit the sew. Again, with it automatically being able to do its own tie-offs. It will then simply move to the beginning. Again, I like to keep a little pressure on this. You'll notice the machine will put the needle in and out. Whether I sit 0, 1, 2, or 3 tie-offs, the system will complete those tie-offs. And again, it begins the sewing process. So we're going to give this a minute here as it works its way through sewing this border or this sashing at whatever size you would want it to be. Now we're getting close to being done right here, and it's been wonderful. Remember, we went and we just chose each one of the corners. Once we did that, we were able to pull the bobbin out from underneath the fabric. We simply hit sew, and now it is moving through the entire pattern. And if we kind of go back down here, it's now finishing with a couple last tie-off stitches that we were finishing with. There we go. And at the end again, one of the things I like to do is I like to pull our bobbin up. I'm going to do this. One of the things that's fun is it can do it automatically, or we can do it manually. So I love myself just doing this manually because it's a pretty quick process. But one of the great things is that there are all sorts of helps built in that will walk you from the very basic process of placing the pattern to going through and finishing quilting this pattern in the system. So again, I love talking about that. We're going to go back, and I'm going to go back to the main screen one more time just to talk briefly about the main layout, to look at a few things. And then I want to go in, and as we're looking at kind of completing this, I'll talk lastly about how we take a pattern and how we go from the top of the quilt to the next row, to the next row, to the next row, because this has the smarts not only to sew one pattern across, but it will actually come and it will help us mark and identify the next pattern in the series, and it'll also help us know then how far to roll our quilt. So again, looking at the screen, we have select and sew. I'm going to come back in here. This is where we can choose all sorts of patterns. If we're doing patterns in single areas, then the block patterns are a very common way to put specific patterns in specific areas. If we're looking at doing a pattern from edge to edge, one of the great things that people love is we can choose these continuous patterns, several different patterns, beautiful patterns, simple ones that can be added to depending on how many patterns we're going to sew to make some simple variations in designs. But again, we can choose those to do edge to edge, or we can actually do in a quilt. So I'm going to go back now. We're going to go into Panto, and I'm going to pretend that we're now going to sew down. And let's use the same space that we had last time. Let me go ahead and measure that again here quickly. So we're going to go ahead and measure the size because I want to repeat this pattern but instead of once, we're going to do a pattern that we can then use to sew down this quilt time and time again. So let me go ahead and choose this. This would give us the same size that we had last time. Let's go ahead and choose a different pattern. So I hit select. Let's come in and choose a different heart because they sew nice and quick for what we're going to demonstrate. Let me add a couple more in there. That looks great. This time I'm going to use the top left corner to position this pattern. It's a different placement method. So we're going to now sew this in zones, and the sew in zones knows that we're actually going to sew more than one row at a time. So here it goes. It's asking, do we want to save this at this point? No, we're not. And it's actually asking for the center of this line. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go back in quickly and use our measure tool. And I'm going to go from the left edge to the right edge so that we can determine and have it find the center for us, which is pretty awesome. So I went to the left. I now moved over to the right side. If we look at the screen, you can actually see that it is marked here. And one of the great things is I can simply now tell it to move the machine to the middle for this position. And it's going to move our machine over to this place. So again, this is pretty fun because I didn't have to measure it. I didn't have to know. I didn't have to get out a tape measure or a ruler to do so. I simply told the machine where those edges were. It now has moved directly to the center. I'm actually ready now to quilt it because it's in the center. I can place that pattern. So now it's been perfectly positioned, and I'm going to simply sew it out. And we're going to go through this process as it sews through this. And when we're done, we're going to show you how easy it is because it gives me the mark for the next pattern, which allows me just to continue from the top of my quilt down through an entire quilt. So it will do the entire quilt for me by simply choosing the size that I want these rows to be edge to edge. So here we go. It's now done the tie-offs. Here it's starting that. And away it goes. Now it's sewing across, in essence, across our quilt from left to right. And we're going to watch this as it finishes it up. Here we go, the machine's finishing. It's going to do our tie-off here as we're wrapping that up. Wonderful, it looks beautiful. I'm a master at quilting. Look what I just did. Okay, just kidding, the machine and the system did it for me. But there we go, that's been sewn. I'm going to quickly tie off our bobbin one more time. It did the tie-off. We're going to quickly, I want to quickly do a single stitch here and then cut the thread. And then here is the fun part. So now it's sewed across. If you remember, I only marked actually the top edge in the middle. But if we look at the screen, it's actually coming up and it gives me an option to say we're finished. And so let's watch kind of what happens here. So I clicked finish. The machine is now going to, on its own, move. And where it's moving is to a place for us where we can now mark it. And so the screen comes up and tells us that we can now mark this position. What I like to do is I'm simply going to use the single stitch, which will actually put a stitch and put the thread into the fabric here for us. And I am going to take just a pen, and you can use a piece of blue tape or a water-soluble pen, and I'm just going to put a dot right there where that is. But we're done. If we'll look at the screen, it tells me we're done because I actually made a mark. It now is asking me, have I made all the marks? Yes, I have. I'm good to go. So now the system is actually ready for me either to place this to sew it. So what we're going to do here, I want to have everybody quickly see this here. I'm going to move this out of the way so we kind of can see. And we're going to bring the camera right in on here so we can kind of see what this is. So if we look, there's actually a stitch mark that we have as a hole. I'm just going to go ahead and put my pin right in there a little bit so we can make that a little bit darker. Normally we wouldn't do a pin. I like to take a piece of blue painter's tape, but that's actually what it marked. And what that means is it actually knows how far down it needs to place the next pattern. Coming back to the screen, if you remember when we started, we simply told it where the middle of the quilt was. That mark down on the quilt is the exact place. So I'm going to move my machine and my needle over there. I'm going to touch my screen. It now will reposition the pattern and we simply will quilt it again. I'm going to kind of stop because this is all we do to move down a quilt. We sew an area, the machine will move, it then marks the next area. We then move the machine, tell it that that's where the mark is, and we continue to quilt down an entire quilt. That's as easy as it is to edge. I'm going to show you one last fun thing really quick that we can do that kind of creates a little bit of some creativity or allows you to be a little creative. I'm going to go back to our home screen and I'm going to go back into select and sew. This time I'm going to choose a pattern that is a triangle pattern. And I want you to see how fun it is to take a pattern like this and what we can actually do. What we did in the past is taking existing patterns, we've sewn them, we've done a sashing or an edge to edge. We've talked a little bit about moving down our quilt. I'm going to go into this great feature, which is how to place triangles, because we can actually position this. If this was a pieced area or a block, we can go down, and I will now take and match the three corners of this area. So we're going to mark the three areas. There's the bottom left, the bottom right, and now the top. And again, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit on this. So that actually has been placed. I'm quickly going to sew this, and literally we're going to create a new pattern by simply sewing this out 4 different times at different angles. So here we go. Now that just finished the pattern, I'm going to come back up on our screen and we can see that there's our pattern. I'm now going to place it next to it. We're rotating this. Take a quick look at our screen. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. We can actually see that it's rotated the pattern, and we're now ready to sew it again. So here we go, quilting. And when you look at that, I simply placed one in each one of those areas. Here as it finishes up, we actually completely created a completely new design that didn't even exist before we began. Just as simple as placing a single pattern. We did that, we just did it 4 times and it rotated the pattern for us. Precision, perfect stitching, exactly where we want it, not only for simple, precise placement of individual patterns or edge to edge or your sashings, but entire quilts can be done just as easily with our Quilter's Creative Touch beginning version. Thank you for joining us. We're excited and would ask for you to see all of our other wonderful videos and our other wonderful demonstrations that show you even more about our Quilter's Creative Touch.